things were getting hotter and hotter, and it just seemed that we needed a place like this to come and exchange our thoughts and perspectives. So actually, without further ado, I'm going to ask our speaker, yes, yes, we have 2 seats in the front. Hey, we have our second speaker, so Elizabeth, you can sit here. So actually, I'm gonna ask the speakers to introduce themselves, so they could say a little bit about who they are. But briefly, their names are Shawore Omoyele, who's with Sahara Reporters, and Milton Alamadi, who is the publisher of Black Star News, and Naka Lagoke, who's from AfricanDiplomacy.com. He's an analyst from DC, and he's come to join us tonight. So, unless there are some questions, I think. Oh, yes. This is the first night that we're co-sponsoring with a new organization to us. It's called Integration Newspaper. And would you like to say a few words? I have his card. You'll probably see the newspaper around. It's a Francophone newspaper published here in New York. Would you like to say a few? Would you like to come forward? What? Yeah.
Bonsoir, mesdames, messieurs. I'm sorry, I will try to be as bilingual as I can. En fait, c'est le message vient, n'est-ce pas, de la langue dans laquelle vous vous sentez le mieux confortable. Moi, je me sens confortable en français. C'est ici que j'ai appris l'anglais. Je suis le directeur de publication de Intégration News Paper. On a créé le journal l'année passée, suite, n'est-ce pas, une idée, suite à un événement. Il y a un Togolais qui avait été assassiné ici l'année passée. J'ai constaté que les Africains étaient vraiment un peu délaissés. Paraît-il que, n'est-ce pas, les Africains ne sont pas informés. Comment est-ce que, n'est-ce pas, un Africain peut venir, n'est-ce pas, à une terre étrangère et mourir sans que les Africains ne fassent quelque chose? C'est là où je suis venu, n'est-ce pas, avec l'idée de créer ce journal appelé Intégration. C'est un journal panafricain. Ça parle toujours de l'Afrique, ça parle bien que de l'Afrique. Je devais déjà vous dire qui je suis. Je suis Frank Felix Gutenberg, camerounais. Mais le journal n'est pas camerounais, le journal est africain. Ça parle de tous les sujets qui sont en Afrique. Bon, je m'excuse que les machines, n'est-ce pas, Dieu nous a donné l'idée de créer quelque chose. Nous avons créé les machines nous ont déçus. Je devais, n'est-ce pas, apporter l'édition qui est sortie, normalement qui devait sortir aujourd'hui. Mais mon imprimerie m'a fait une fausse route. Donc, vous allez avoir l'édition de décembre. C'est un journal qui paraît 2 fois par mois. Mais je n'étais pas là, j'étais parti à Burkina Faso sous l'invitation de Mme Chantal Compaoré. Donc, je n'ai pas pu sortir la 10e édition du mois de décembre. Ça, c'est le papier. Ça, c'est l'une des éditions du mois de décembre. Donc, l'édition du mois de janvier devait sortir aujourd'hui. Mais vraiment, je suis navré que l'imprimerie m'a fait fausse route. Donc, mesdames et messieurs, comme vous le savez, comme vous le voyez aussi, je veux, n'est-ce pas, que nous tous, Africains, que nous nous joignons, que nous fassions, n'est-ce pas, tâche d'huile ici aux États-Unis, dans la diaspora. Parce que tous ceux qui lisent le journal Intégration, déjà qui aussi distribué au Canada et puis un peu partout aux États-Unis, tous ceux qui lisent ce journal me font, n'est-ce pas, m'appellent et puis d'autres me félicitent, d'autres vont me faire des contributions. Donc j'attends les contributions de tous les Africains en général, tous les Africains de toute nationalité, que ce soit en anglais ou en français. Déjà parce que le journal est un journal bilingue, mais hélas, nous n'avons pas encore le personnel anglophone, nous publions en français. Mais l'idée est de faire de ce journal un journal bilingue. Nous acceptons tous les articles, n'est-ce pas, parlant de l'Afrique, tous les articles venant, que ce soit en français ou Lingala, non, Lingala, ouais. Et puis, il y a une langue sud-africaine. Swahili, merci beaucoup. Donc, nous acceptons le publier. Donc, mon nom est là-dedans.
It is now in Africa. I think in Ivory Coast it's about 1 a.m. in the morning. In Lagos, it's about 12. Lagos is 1 a.m. And in New York, it's 7 p.m. I've always said that in Africa, to my experience, there are two Africas. Of course, the one for the rich and the poor, the strong and the weak. And my experience now is that there are three Africas, the ones on the continent divided into two, strong, rich, political, non-political, oppressed, unoppressed, and of course the Africa of the diaspora. And it's becoming a very, very strong community. This is the Africa that I derisively call the Western Union Africa. That's just here to send money back home. So you're welcome, Western Union people. I'm delighted to moderate tonight's event. I just have to say that I have very, very difficult personalities to manage. So you should make it as simple as possible for me to manage your own side of the equation. The reason is that when we had the Rwandan roundtable here, we almost had to call the NYPD. Because the Rwandan government brought in a whole load of Rwandan officials who were just like very, very uncontrollable and sometimes unruly. But the bottom line was that we found out at the end of even that very contentious Rwanda roundtable that there's actually no disagreement between all of us. We want an Africa that is better, that is progressive, an Africa where there's respect for human rights, where our leaders don't steal our money or votes, our Africa where there's respect for our dignity as a people, an Africa that we can return to and be Africans and not to be second-class citizens anywhere in the world. So that is the spirit in which I want to welcome you to tonight's roundtable. I am aware that even on the continent, in Ivory Coast itself, there's partitioning of opinion. People have different opinions. I'm not going to tell you my own opinion yet, but I also have an opinion. And that is the fact that Africa has just seen too much in terms of strong, big men, who, whenever they find themselves in tight corners, suddenly remember the people. But the good example for all of us is that just as we have Ivory Coast, there's also the good news of Tunisia. Last week, where the people rose against their own big man and drove him out of town. It's very sad that we still have Saudi Arabia there, who is taking Ben Ali after Idi Amin died there. So that's another topic for a symposium discussion in the future. You are welcome to today's roundtable. And I have on my left Mr. Milton Alimadi, who is going to discuss what he thinks about the Ivorian situation. And I apologize, my brother. Give me your name again.
Nyaka.
Lagoke. Lagoke. So who is going to also talk about this? And of course, the most important speaker or speakers tonight are yourselves. So we will be back to you. So make use of the best time that we have available. And don't forget that we don't have all tonight to ourselves. So you're welcome once again. And I will be... speakers, I'm very, 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 very serious about timing. So I'm going to take 10 minutes each at first for each of the speakers to talk about. And then we'll go back to the audience to ask questions, Audience, you don't have 10 minutes, maybe, so nobody should stand up and try to speak for 10 minutes. Otherwise, you'll be swapping with speakers. So, and then we'll take questions and comments from you, and then we'll come back for them to wrap up for another 5 minutes. And then we'll see how it goes. Okay. So thank you. So we'll take Mr. Milton first.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the overwhelming turnout. I remember the days when we had these kind of events and there would be 4 or 5 people here. So a round of applause to all of you for coming. And thank you, Lisa, for providing this forum. And as I always say, and I hope I get an extra minute for this, as I always say, without this forum, we would not have the opportunity to gather like this and express our views openly. It costs money to maintain a place like this. She pays rent every month. So feel free to drop something, whatever you can spare from your pocket as you walk out. And I say this in every gathering. And I always make the first donation of $20. So put that toward my pledge.
Put it on the table.
Okay, how many people here are from the Ivory Coast?
1.
Okay, very good. The turnout is almost 50-50. It shows that there is a widespread interest, because this is not seen only as an election for the Ivory Coast. And so people of the Ivory Coast, you have to excuse us, and as somebody who is not from the Ivory Coast, I apologize on my behalf. But at the same time, we feel like we have a vested interest, not only in the Ivory Coast, but in every election in every African country. Why? Because many Africans are frustrated by the fact that 50 years plus after independence, we are still discussing the issue of succession, orderly transfer of power. Countries such as China, Brazil, and India, who are at a low stage of economic development, using antiquated agricultural methods that we still use in African countries, 50 years ago, have now succeeded in transforming their economies. Because regardless, even in a country like China, which is not your typical model of a democracy, they have orderly transfer of power. So that, for example, President Jintao in China right now, he knows that there is a successor already lined up to succeed him. And yet in African countries, we're still dealing with issues such as, is it Mwai Kibaki? Is it Odinga? Is it Ouattara? Is it Gbagbo? Is it Tsvangirai? Is it Mugabe? These are the kind of issues that are holding us back, arresting our potential, preventing our people from realizing the skills that they know that they have. They know they have the skills, because when they come to a country such as the United States, they know they can compete with anybody in this country, intellectually, creatively. So when we see the politics, the absence of a stable method of transition of power holding back our potential on the continent, we take an interest. We take a vested interest. And that's why so-called outsiders such as ourselves are vested in the outcome of the election in the Ivory Coast. And in February, when Uganda holds elections in Uganda, subsequently in the Congo, and subsequently in Kenya again. That is why it is a universal affair. It's an all-African affair. So having said this, why are we here today? Obviously because there's a political paralysis in the Ivory Coast. There are two claimants to the presidency, and we all know that's not tenable. Now, the incumbent says that the challenger in the regions where he has the largest support, in the north, there was a lot of election malpractice there. So therefore, that is the reason why the votes were invalidated. And the outcome which was initially announced by the Election Commission is actually not correct. Is it a possibility that votes, there was actually malpractice in the north? Of course. Given the history of elections in African countries, and given the fact that the Ivory Coast itself does not have a tradition or culture of holding these kind of elections, free and fair elections, of course it's possible. At the same time, is there a possibility that there was equal malpractice in the South, where the incumbent has wide support? And the answer, once again, is of course. Now, in order to resolve the crises, there has been outside involvement. The outside involvement has been conducted in a very curious way. For example, there's a question whether the United States has an independent approach toward the crises, or is it just echoing the approach of France? That's a question that is worth examining. Now, what is France's position? Probably the other speaker would be able to elaborate much more specifically on that, but as a general basis, we know that the French have always had a policy of intrigue when it comes to dealing with African countries. And first of all, I think some of the outside intervention or involvement in the process has not been done the way it might have been done. It might have been done in a better way. I don't think it's helped to relieve the tension or suggest an approach toward a solution. For example, you have the president of France arrogantly demanding that the incumbent step down within 2 or 3 days. Who is France to make such a demand? Number one. And I'm not taking, obviously, any issue whether the incumbent should have indeed stepped down in 3 days or not. But that is not the kind of thing that would come from a President Sarkozy, the president of a former colonial power. So I thought that was completely wrong, and it might have, in fact, I believe it has backfired in terms of resolving the issue. And then number two, the position of ECOWAS. It's very unusual to announce in advance that you are considering a military option and then say we are going to start sending emissaries to come in and discuss. That, to me, does not make sense. If you are saying you're considering military intervention, then you should be sending generals and chief of staffs of the regional armies to deliver the ultimatum. It does not make sense. And then some of the people who are supposed to be the intermediaries have very heavy political baggage. We have the Prime Minister of Kenya, who, before going there, he was one of the first to announce that there should be immediate military intervention. I don't see him qualifying then, after already making such a statement, as somebody who is coming there to still meet with both sides. So a lot of the outside mechanism toward relieving this situation, I think, has actually backfired. And whether the incumbent had indeed lost this election, I think the way the outsiders have conducted themselves have actually put him in a firmer position now. Now he's able to say that I am actually defending our sovereignty against France, against the United States, and against the agents of France and the United States. So I see this as a much more higher hurdle than it was initially at the end of the runoff election itself. I think before I propose my own possible suggestions in terms of what might be done going forward, I think I'll limit myself to the time given for the initial remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Milton has spoken, and I'm sure he spoke with great clarity. I just have a small information to give regarding military intervention. People who are from Ivory Coast need not worry. Nigeria was supposed to lead any form of intervention militarily in Ivory Coast through what they call ECOMAG. But the good news, or bad news, is that Nigeria itself does not have an army that can fight outside of Nigeria. The Nigerian army is involved in peacekeeping and crime fighting in 21 states inside of Nigeria, out of 36. So it does not have that elastic army to go and fight. Now, Ivory Coast is not Liberia and it's not Sierra Leone, where you can just go and kick out the Boy Scout. You know, you have juggernauts there who are holed up in different positions. But what I have to say, though, that on my own perspective, is that I am personally tired of African leaders who have this messianic mentality that if they don't win elections, nobody else can do it. You know, and that is where I differ with the general rhetoric on both sides on the issue of Ivory Coast, that only Gbagbo can be the president of Ivory Coast after spending 5 years. It's just nauseating and repulsive to me, because I've seen too many of these African leaders who have that same mentality, you know, and they remember only when they find themselves in a corner that they are fighting for the sovereignty of their own people. But they don't remember when they perpetrate hunger and starvation in that country for 10 years that the people of their country have sovereignty. But suddenly, now France is intervening because we've seen this in Algeria in 1992 when they refused to allow democratic elections to take place. It happened in Nigeria in 1992 when we had a crazy military leader who said he couldn't hand over power because he wanted to fight against the US. Of course, they weren't fighting against the US. All of the time he was doing all of this, they were passing all of Nigeria's money into Western banks. You know, they don't have a problem with the sovereignty of the banks, but they have a problem with the sovereignty of their country and their people. So at this point, I would just want to hand over to the next speaker to do justice to today's event.
I'm sorry, before the next speaker speaks, I need to respond to the moderator. I agree. In fact, when you talk of long-term strongmen, in the case of the Ivory Coast, perhaps the two candidates should never have run in the first place. Perhaps both of the political parties might have promoted younger generation of African leaders to contest in this election. These are two elephants, and the House is too small for both of these elephants. And in terms of sovereignty, I'm not justifying it. I am saying the outsiders have given him the excuse to use this argument. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, so my name is Nyaka Laboke. I'm going to stand up because I'm not as tall as my. Okay, I'm from the Ivory Coast, and I was a journalist in my country for 8 years. So it doesn't give me a comparative or competitive advantage, you know, compared to other speakers about the situation in my country. But I have reported about politics in my country for 8 years, and I am a passionate of politics. So since I came here I've been living here for 11 years. I've been documenting, I've been doing what I can do in order to follow what is happening in my country on a regular basis. Now, I don't know if some of you heard me on some shows, but I've never said that Gbagbo Laurent won the election. And I know Professor Campbell from Syracuse University, after I had a debate with him on January 4th on Democracy Now!, thought that maybe because he was uncomfortable when he heard some of the information I shared with him, that maybe he did not want to integrate in his analysis, he went and he wrote a piece, and that is like widely spread on internet, saying that I have repeatedly saying that Gbagbo Laurent won the election. I never said it, and tonight I'm going to share with you my position. I said that I don't know who truly won the election in the Ivory Coast, because I'm not going to believe the information reported by the international media coming from the Electoral Commission that says that Alassane Dramane Ouattara won 54% and Gbagbo Laurent had 46%, just because, according to what they have as information, they certified all the steps of the process, and therefore, if they say that Alassane Ouattara won, then everybody in the world should accept that Alassane Ouattara truly won the election. When I followed the election, the first round and the second round, we had people who are from the Ivory Coast. We had conflicting numbers. You can see, for instance, that in some areas, you can see the number of registers in some areas. The first round and the second round did not match. I've seen that, and the result I received them from the United Nations mission in the Ivory Coast. That was even before the Electoral Commission proclaimed the result of the runoff. Now, I know you heard so many things. There is only one key to understand the crisis in Ivory Coast. Maybe if we do the investigation, we can discover that Gbagbo has truly lost the election. But there is one key. It is the participation rate. For those who follow the election in the Ivory Coast, on Sunday, many Ivorians, they noticed, and people were following the election, that Ivorians did not come out massively to participate in the runoff. If you think that I'm lying, go on internet, do your research, and you will discover. So when you discover that, then you will see that, oh, you have to be a little careful when you're talking about the result proclaimed by the international media. The first round, they said that the participation rate was 83% in the Ivory Coast. The second round, there are different, I'm going to share that with you. There are different sources, and all of them agreed upon the fact that the participation rate could not go beyond 70%. There is a communique issued by the United Nations mission in the Ivory Coast, November 29. The number of the communique in French is 937. You can write that down, and you can go and do your research. France 24, November 29, November 28, the same day, the day of the election. They issued, like they did a report, and they said that the participation rate could not go beyond 70%. It was going to vary between 60 to 70%. The president of the Electoral Commission himself on TV noticed that the Ivorians did not come out massively to participate in the election. And then when you go and look at the communique 937 issued by the United Nations, it is after a meeting between Choi, of the UN representative in the Ivory Coast, and the representative of the Francophone International Observers, Mr. I don't know, his name is, I will find his name, La Tortue or something like that. And they issued that communique. So then, all of us, so we were expecting, when the result come, we were expecting to see that the participation rate was going to be 60 to 70%. Guess what? They announced that the participation rate was 81%. So when I argue with, what's his name, Campbell, or whoever support Alassane Draman Ouattara, I said, maybe Alassane Ouattara has really won the election, but you're not going to come and tell us that the participation rate in Ivory Coast was 81%. That it is not possible. And you can find, I have some reference, I can share that with you guys later on, or I can send an email and you can go and check all those things. So that's why people who support Gbagbo, their theory is that if they really take into account the fact that the participation rate was going to be around 70%, that Gbagbo has won the election. I don't have any evidence in my hands, to tell you that Gbagbo won the election, but that's their theory. And then the votes, they're canceling the northern part of Ivory Coast. Alassane Ouattara was going to win there anyway. Now, the theory coming from Gbagbo's camp is that the people who support Bédié did not come out massively to vote, either because of intimidation of voters, like in the South. Then the report of votes was not massive. Then, therefore, Alassane Ouattara supporters, when they saw that, they panicked. And this is how they started doing those malpractices in the North. And people, you should know that that's it. This is what they say. So you can go and do your research. So I'm telling you, it is difficult for people to say, because I haven't seen the result coming from the Constitutional Council, to say, oh, I've seen them, so I did all the numbers, and Gbagbo has truly won. I'm not saying that. But at the same time, don't believe everything that are reported by the international media, or there are things that are not reported by the international media about the crisis in the Ivory Coast, about the participation rate. So that's number one. Second thing, I know Gbagbo has, his legacy has a bittersweet taste, Gbagbo. He's a freedom fighter, struggled in Ivory Coast for 30 years. He was promoting a pacific transition to democracy, came to power. There are some people here I know who can tell you a little bit about me. I was one of Gbagbo's critics. I was, and I am still one of the people who openly said what I think about the way he was governing the country. Now, I have seen that Ni Akwete from Ghana, with whom I had a debate on Saturday, and Campbell, they think that in order to discredit my message of my discourse, they have to say, oh, Nyaka is supporting Gbagbo, as if Gbagbo was a devil. Gbagbo is not a devil. He's a human being with his flaws, with his mistakes, but at least he was sincere. When he was trying to promote democracy and freedom in Ivory Coast, you can go and read, for 30 years, the guy was fighting against Félix Houphouët-Boigny. And then, as a Pan-Africanist, one of the things I haven't particularly appreciated in his political career is that he hasn't fully embraced the Pan-African movement. And you cannot go against multinational forces like France and America, and then you're not going to be able, to put together a system of a movement of Pan-Africanists or people of goodwill. They can be Asian, they can be white, they can be Hispanic, but who believe in the cause of Africa. Gbagbo Laurent hasn't done that. So tonight, watch out. I'm going to give you a quotation. I'm going to say something in Spanish. No me escondo detrás de Gbagbo Laurent. Tampoco escondo a Gbagbo Laurent. I'm not hiding behind Gbagbo Laurent, but at the same time, I'm not hiding Gbagbo Laurent. In other words, I claim part of his legacy, and I've distanced myself from some of the things he has done, but still today, he is the symbol of the resistance of millions of Africans who think that France, America, and all those powers are doing the wrong thing by trying and supporting one person who everybody knows that he has funded the rebellion in Ivory Coast. He has used, like Gbagbo and Bédié, he has used ethnicity to try and run for president. And then today, for 8 years, the country was divided into two, and the rebels control the northern part of the country. Nobody knows what they did about the population, if they have given papers to whoever in the northern part, because nobody could go there to check that. So this is the reality. When I talk with facts, and this is my introduction, and then later on, I'm willing to answer any question you're going to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Same feed where people don't insult others and don't fight unnecessarily. I'm not against fighting. I just don't want to moderate the fight.
Take it outside.
If you have to fight, take it downstairs. So I want to hear from you. Just indicate by raising up your hand, and like I said, you can make a short comment or ask a question of our speakers about what you think is going on in Ivory Coast. Like I said, I just think when any kind of trouble in Africa lasts for too long, it takes the female at the back. Please introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, my name is Mana. I lived in the Ivory Coast for several years. It's a lovely country. I have some very pleasant memories there. Now, I put up my hand because I know later on in the evening I may not have the opportunity to say anything, because I'm sure everybody would be wanting to say something. Now, this is an electoral dispute. We had a dispute like that here in the United States in 2000 between Bush and Gore. So we hear talk of war, and armies and Africans fighting Africans, and we know what's happening in the Congo and what happened in Rwanda. And I just wonder why it is that this dispute has to be resolved through war. Now, Alassane Ouattara proclaims that he is won by 54% against Gbagbo's 46%. Now, that's almost a 10-point difference. Time and again, Gbagbo has asked that there be a recount. With a 10-point difference, why has he refused? That's one of my questions. The other question I'd like to say is that we keep on saying that there are two presidents in the Ivory Coast. How could there be two presidents? Is there not a process that has to be followed to name a president? Was the process respected? And if the process was respected, who came out or who was proclaimed winner at the end of this process? Was the process thwarted at a certain point in time? Because there can only be one president according to the laws of the Ivory Coast. Was that respected? Was the process respected? And when we see what's going on across all of Africa, I mean, I was amazed to see the major interest by all the mainstream press, CNN and BBC and Al Jazeera. I've never seen that in Africa. So what is it with the Ivory Coast? What is going on there that the Ivory Coast has become so focal?
Thank you. Next person, please, over here.
Thank you. The United Nations has come out very strongly in support of what... Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis Fitzgerald. I'm a freelance journalist. The United Nations has come out very strongly in support of Ouattara and are providing him protection. The Security Council also authorised an additional 2,000 troops this morning. And Choi has declared Ouattara the winner. So your views on the United Nations, and can it be seen as impartial in Cote d'Ivoire, and what you're hearing from people within Cote d'Ivoire?
Let's take a guy at the back, standing.
Yes, my name is Kambale. I'm from the Congo, so this issue is also dear to me because it may happen in my country in a few months. The Democratic Republic of Congo. So I still want to get some feedback from your introduction, the audience, including myself. I did not get a sense of who is Ouattara and who is Gbagbo. So it would be good to kind of share who are these two people and what they've done in the country and why there is a contention right now that's being dealt with within Ivory Coast.
Thank you. Yes, we'll take you next. No, let's just take, because the last question is not a good question. So let's take two more. Go ahead. Yeah.
Madeleine Kondo. I'm from the center of the Ivory Coast, the major party that is invaded by the rebels. We have a place that we built for my mom to live with the rent. Today, the rebels are living in all these houses, and we have to move our family to the south. What the United Nations is doing about that? That's one. Two, we shouldn't even be here discussing, because I remember the last treaty that the Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré went to Ivory Coast to sign. The last agreement, it was about the rebel to give up the weapon before election. When I'm not with Gbagbo or Ouattara, but when Gbagbo asked them, because in the treaty, 2 months after the signing of that, the last treaty, they were supposed to give up the weapon. When he asked them to do it so before they go for election, the same United Nations, the French government, the American, all of them told him it because he doesn't want to give up his seat. That's the reason why he doesn't want to go for election. How can you control a fair election in a region where people have weapons? That's my second question. My third question, we saw President Bush when he was about to invade Iraq at the United Nations. A lot of countries were not on his side. The same people, he told them, with, I remember his word, with or without the United Nations, we will go. So that means the United Nations, when you look at their rules, 1 pound of meat in London that cannot weight the same pound in America, which means the same pound of meat is not necessarily a pound of meat in France. Or, if I understand, the United Nations, when you are a small country, you don't have the resource, you have to follow their rules. But when you are among the big country, they have to follow your rules. That's all.
My name is Ferdinand Tutuper. I'm from the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. It's not going to be a question. It's going to be a contribution to, what these speakers have done. The situation in the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire is this. Mr. Gbagbo, if I may, you may just allow me, quite enough time.
No, you don't have that much time. Just
okay, I mean, they need it. People need it, because this is the side of the information that people don't know. What is it? Back in 2000, Mr. Gbagbo was elected president. 2 years later, Mr. Ouattara financed rebels and took part of the country, which has been divided. The United Nations, France, and America were called in for a ceasefire that would have led to transparent and democratic elections. One of the conditions for them was what? Let anybody, any Ivorian, be a candidate to those elections. Mr. Gbagbo used the Article number 48 of the Constitution to make Mr. Ouattara an exceptional candidate to the elections. That's one thing. The other thing that the government was asking for was for the rebels to disarm to guarantee a fair and democratic elections. For 8 years, the United Nations, France, and those powers have not been able to disarm the rebels. when came the time, like she was saying, they were telling Mr. Gbagbo that you don't want to organize elections because you know that you're going to lose them. So he had to, and he did organize elections. The problem was what now? After this first round, some irregularities were mentioned and noted. They sent troops in the north just as observers. Those troops did take pictures, they did take notes of whatever happened in the north. Based on those things, like in any elections, any process, if you want to make a complaint, you had to write to the Constitutional Council or Supreme Court. Mr. Gbagbo's camp did all those and sent all those documents to the Constitutional Council. One thing I want to say here about the results. Why are we talking about two presidents? One, Mr. Ouattara, who was declared winner by the Independent Election Commission. It is a process, like in the Ivory Coast, by the laws of the country, and with the help of the United Nations, because they were in to assist in the process. One, the commission organizes elections. They proclaim a provisional winner, transmit those results to the Constitutional Council or Supreme Court, who declares the final winner. In third, the United Nations representative certifies that result. What we saw is, in the first round, things ran out perfectly, no complaint. On the runoff elections, when Mr. Bakayoko, who is the president of the Independent Commission, was one out of delay. He had a 3-day deadline to proclaim the results. He didn't do that. Two, by the laws or the rules, for him to announce the results, he was to be assisted by at least a representative of each candidate. It didn't happen. Three, for him to declare, he had to be assisted by some of the committee members or commission members. That didn't happen. Three, the results were announced not in the office of the commission, but at the headquarters of Alassane Dramane Ouattara. So these are the two things that we need to know.
The ambassador of France and the United States.
I mean, yeah, President Gbagbo says it, so I can say it. He was picked up and taken to that hotel to make the announcement.
Yes, can we wrap up now?
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I mean, that's what
it is important, but at the same time.
All right, so cool. Now,
we have
real quick. I mean, it's just information sharing. So, okay, let me finish. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the situation. Now, we have two positions where Mr. Gbagbo is calling for an international investigation team, while Mr. Ouattara, who says he's the winner, is calling for the use of force. People, it's about to you guys to make your own comments. Thank you.
So, what I'm trying to do as the moderator is to go back to the major speakers, and again to also make it abundantly clear that I have not taken any position, and I do not believe what the Western media is saying as much as I don't believe what Gbagbo's media is also saying, because all of them are engaged in what you can call very, very powerful propaganda, So what we are interested in is the Ivorians themselves, the people of Ivory Coast, because don't forget that the reason why there was a runoff election was that two of these guys did not win outrightly. Yes, there are other candidates also involved in this election who have acceptability in Ivory Coast. So there is an Ivorian people in this race, that is different from France, America, and Gbagbo. But again, I go back to our speakers.
Okay, there were several questions. I'll try to address as many as I can recall. You asked the question about the impartiality of the UN. I think this is your own question. Is also the answer. Yes, I think there's no doubt that that's not even the case right now. I think it's been quite obvious for some time that Ouattara has been anointed as the person that won the election. and subsequently all the other conduct follows from that position. He gets UN protection because he's the one that's been recognized by the United Nations as the person that is the president of the Ivory Coast. The lady asked in terms of procedure. I think this gentleman addressed part of that, and at the end of the day, both individuals had themselves sworn in as president, and that's no. That is the fact of what happened. In terms of legitimacy of either, that's a different issue. That's a different issue.
Yeah.
I'm answering the question she asked, and that's what I'm sticking to. And in terms of investigating the election, I think it's going to be very difficult for the UN to resist that argument, because we just saw what happened in Haiti, where there was a similar case. There was election. There were 3 candidates who came up on top. The second candidate was the preferred candidate of the incumbent president in Haiti, and he was supposed to go in the runoff with the person that got the highest total, the female professor. But what happened? There was an uprising, and an investigation was conducted, led primarily by the Organization of American States, and the report was just issued this week. And the report says that, in fact, the second candidate was not the second candidate, that in fact he was the third candidate, and the candidate who came out number 3 should be elevated to the second position and should be allowed to contest in the runoff. So in terms of using references elsewhere in the world, obviously there's a legitimate case to do that. And in fact, I have to admit that when Gbagbo came up and started advocating that, that also caused me to start re-examining some of the past reporting. And I noticed that in the initial reporting, he was Ouattara was the presumed winner. This was in the BBC. I think the U.S. Publications went a little bit beyond presumed winner. Now, between that time, the end of November, and today, nothing has changed in terms of re-examining the outcome of the election. But the language has certainly changed. He's no longer the presumed winner. He is, in fact, the definitive winner. So people in media that read words very carefully, these kind of things bother us. I admit, as a person who is like the moderator, also very tired and frustrated of African politicians stealing elections, incumbents staying on perpetually, wanting to be presidents for life, I felt an overwhelming sense of frustration as well at the outcome of the election in the Ivory Coast, and I felt that the incumbent was once again doing the thing that many incumbents have done throughout the continent. But as the process has evolved, I have been re-examining some of these issues a bit more carefully, especially the way the foreign so-called mediators have been conducting themselves. And I see that as now becoming a big part of the problem as well.
Right. Okay. There's a gentleman who asked a wonderful question. You know, I know we heard many good questions, but I just wanted to talk about your question because usually people don't want to ask that kind of question. So who are those people? Who is Alassane Dramane Ouattara and who is Gbagbo Laurent? I'm going to talk about the philosophies or the way they see their vision, and I will talk about the methods of operation, and I will talk about why those people have been in the central part of the crisis in the country. When we were growing up in Ivory Coast, we were tired of Houphouët-Boigny's rule for decades, so we were expecting and hoping to find somebody to come against Houphouët-Boigny, who people seem to forget, who was backed for 33 years by France. And that's the reality. Our economy is in the hands of French, And then the second group, that control the Ivorian economy is composed of Lebanese. So we cannot tell you, for instance, that we have a real industry, like industrial sector in the Ivory Coast, that can compete, for instance, with Asian industrial sectors. Because according to the system, the neo-colonial pact, you have to give your raw materials to European countries, particularly France, and this is how Houphouët-Boigny could, maneuver to stay in power for 33 years. Like I said, like the gentleman said, you don't want to listen to Gbagbo's propaganda, you don't want to listen to for Ouattara or the international media propaganda. The only thing that can reconcile us is when we go and look at the facts. Now, Laurent Gbagbo went to exile in 1982 for 6 years and almost 7 years because he was fearing for his life and he was promoting democracy and freedom, and at the same time, Gbagbo Laurent wanted he thought that the best way, to promote freedom and democracy in Africa, it was through what he called the Pacific transition to democracy. And then in 1989, when Africa was on the verge of experiencing multi-party system, there are some people like Charles Taylor who still believed like in armed struggle, and this is what he did in Liberia. Gbagbo, for 33 years, you can go. That's why he's so frustrated by what is happening to him. He did not think even once that he should even take a knife, to promote freedom and democracy in Ivory Coast. So, 1990, he became, of course, the leader of the opposition. And then, of course, all of us were happy and we were hoping that through him, Ivory Coast could experience like democracy. And then he competed against Houphouët in 1990. One thing people don't know, people talk about Ivory Coast as a land of xenophobia. Foreigners, people were not Ivorians, they were voting in Ivory Coast since 1960 to 1990. In a one-party system, Houphouët-Boigny allowed that so that somebody who fought against the Pan-African ideal and against Nkrumah, Senghor, and all those people, he thought that he could allow all those people who come into Ivory Coast to participate in the elections, and then of course, he was one candidate, he was going to win anyway. But now, when he was opposed to Gbagbo, and then Gbagbo said, okay, let's apply Article 5 of the Constitution that says that the only people who can vote in Ivory Coast should be Ivorian, then people say, Gbagbo is against foreigners. This is how that propaganda started already in 1990. Now, Gbagbo is and I can tell you that, he's a great politician, great tactician, a very skillful politician. But he makes mistakes. And I know some don't want to hear that. He makes a lot of mistakes. Like I said, he did not take into account the fact that sooner or later, he was going to have in front of him, like what we call imperialism and, France and all those countries, because they want leaders they want to put in power. Gbagbo is a social democrat. He believes that the state, he believes in free market, and at the same time believes that the state should regulate wealth in the country. All the things, he wrote about that before he came to power. Now, Alassane Dramane Ouattara he has a different path. At age 30, he got his PhD in Pennsylvania. You can imagine in those years, like somebody, like a young African coming from a French-speaking country who came to America, who obtained his PhD, you can think that the guy has a kind of vision about his career. I'm not talking about his political career, about his career. Now, the problem we have in Ivory Coast about Alassane Ouattara's citizenship is that he was certainly born in Ivory Coast, according to some facts. One of his parents was certainly Ivorian, this is what people say, but I cannot tell you that I've seen some credible documents saying that both of his parents are Ivorian, both of his parents are foreigner. But Henri Konan Bédié wrote in his book that one of Alassane Ouattara's parents is from Upper Volta. So at age 11, and this is what people don't want to know, at age 11, Alassane Ouattara went with his father or uncle to Upper Volta at that time. So from 11 to the time he has to come to the US to study, he came here as a citizen of Upper Volta. That's facts. If you think I'm lying, take my email, I will send you the document. Huh?
Is that Ghana, Upper Volta?
No, Burkina Faso. Okay. So this is the history of the guy about his citizenship. And now, when Houphouët-Boigny was dying in 1990, under the pressure and the injunction of the financial institution, they wanted somebody to come and to implement those neoliberal policies like Alassane Ouattara believed in. And he came for 3 years as a prime minister, and he tried to give a sense of order and organization to the Ivorian people. People were a little bit excited to go to work, because you know how people do things in Africa. So he tried, but he did not succeed because of many, many factors. We can talk about that another time. Now, when he was banned from running for president because of Bédier conceived the concept of ivoirité, and people, that's fact also. But one thing people don't know or don't want to talk about it is that in 1990, when Alassane Ouattara was prime minister, the people from the north who were in a covenant with the Akan tribe, with Félix Houphouët-Boigny, they thought that after Houphouët-Boigny it was their turn and their time to rule the country. They conceived an ideology of people from the north called La Charte du Nord, the Chart of the Northerners. And when I was debating with Campbell, I asked him to go and read that chart in a book called Côte d'Ivoire, l'année terrible, 1999-2000, page 301, 302. So you can find, the chart of the Northerner over there. So we had both ideologies, both divisive ideology, ivoirité and chart of the Northerners, symbolized by Henri Konan Bédier and Alassane Ouattara. And then the gentleman came to the IMF here, works as the deputy manager of the IMF, and in that time, Gbagbo Laurent, there was a coup in 1999, and Gbagbo Laurent maneuvered, to become president of the Ivory Coast in 2000. Now, talking about the methods, and that's one of the differences, when I have with Alassane Ouattara. Everywhere I go, if I meet people who support him or people who don't support him, there is no way in a country like Ivory Coast, where you see that we symbolized a microcosm of a united Africa, and you come and you do like people who are trying to destroy you, and you use ethnicity and religion for you to run for president, and then not only that, you found a rebellion, and when the rebels when they were in Burkina Faso, they were founded and financed by Alassane Ouattara. You go on YouTube, you put Alassane Ouattara, you will see all those videos there. You will see one rebel standing somewhere in the northern part of Ivory Coast and saying that they received 25 million of our currency from Alassane Ouattara each month for them to prepare the rebellion. So, no, there's Zakaria. So when you see that, and people don't want to talk about that, then it's frustrating. So, like I said, now when Gbagbo came, that's his mistake. When he came to power, instead of working in order to integrate Alassane Ouattara in the political system, or in order to try and promote like a better union of the nation, he surfed on the concept of ivoirité. That was Gbagbo's mistake. So when I said that I'm independent when I speak, because all the things are facts. And I even wrote a book on that. I will publish maybe in 1 or 2 years. So this is what happened, and then Alassane Ouattara used violence, to be accepted as a candidate, and then for him to run as a president. Then my last point is this: when people say that Gbagbo Laurent is killing people in Ivory Coast since the runoff, yes, Gbagbo's forces are killing people in order to protect Gbagbo's regime. But the people are not going to tell me that all the people who are dying in Ivory Coast are killed by Gbagbo's forces. If you go on YouTube on December 16, you will see that Alassane Ouattara believed in violence to conquer, to reach his goals. The protesters, people who support him, when they were in the street protesting, they were with Alassane Ouattara's rebels with weapons. If you think I'm lying, go on YouTube, you will see those videos there. So these are those two people, and of course Alassane Ouattara believed in neoliberal policies. And that's one thing I wanted to say about Alassane Ouattara. Now, somebody asked a question about what is going on in Ivory Coast. Yes, I'm going to tell you what is going on in Ivory Coast. People who support Gbagbo, who think that injustice was done to Gbagbo when he came to power, And then Alassane Ouattara funded the rebellion, and I keep saying that people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. They say that even if they have the proof and the evidence that Gbagbo has lost the election, Gbagbo should keep the power in order to do injustice to Alassane Ouattara, in order to repair the injustice that was done to Gbagbo. That is what our people think. If you think I'm lying, call Ivorians from the south, they will going to tell you that. Just 1 second. Okay, the last thing is that the last thing is about military intervention. I did not get a chance to talk about that. I oppose the military intervention. I said that many times, because there is no way you're going to push Africans to go and fight against other Africans just because you think that somebody lost the election. And the people that did that in the 15th century, when the slave masters thought that they were supposed to oppose Africans to other Africans. They did that during colonial time. They are doing that during neo-colonial time. And I think that the descendants of the Caucasians would believe that, you know, they need to maintain the power that because they have the guilt of being the descendant of former slave masters and former colonizers. They think that they cannot go themselves to Ivory Coast and try and remove Gbagbo from power. Then what they need to do, the same thing they have been doing. They're going to find the Nigerian president who wants to be president, who wants to be put an end to the zoning system in Nigeria, who is not sure that he's going to have a fair election and he's going to win. They're going to find other leaders like Odinga, who thinks that he has to do something like that to please Obama so that they can go and kill people. Ivory Coast, you take one family. One is from Ivory Coast, a traditional ethnic group, and one comes from another country. That's the reality in Ivory Coast. It is the microcosm of the United Africa. It's a cosmopolitan nation. It is a nation where you can see different races. So when you go there, you're not going to kill just Gbagbo's tribe. You're going to kill Nigerian. You're going to kill Ghanaian. You're going to kill other people. And I said that I am opposed to military intervention, and that issue can be solved, and there are different ways to solve that issue. That's my last point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me make a quick announcement that this event will be edited and it will be on YouTube as well. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I like about Gbagbo is that he knows how to dance very well. You know, I saw him on YouTube, and I thought that he would have lost left power to be, you know, to be dancing all over the world, you know, and just have a better life. But that's on a that's the stars. Yes, he could have been dancing with the stars. Anyways, also we are going to put photographs of this event on our website, SaharaReporters.com, so you can check it out later tomorrow. And we don't want to forget that this place is like a church, so make a contribution before you leave, you know, even like a mosque. So I want to take your question, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I thought you were against it.
No.
Because of the color of my skin.
No, you don't look like Gbagbo.
No, with respect. And without all the accusations against the U.S., Obama, France, the UN, everyone, you said you had a thought for a solution. Let's look to solutions other than a coalition government, which nobody's going to agree to, which didn't work out in Kenya, didn't work out in Zimbabwe. If so, and if people could agree on it, to form some kind of advocacy group like the Friends of Congo did and send pressure the people that you think should be pressured, even the AU, if they could do with something. Let's come up, try and think of some solutions, agree, and get a letter out that could be circulated to the people it should go to.
I'd like to say that people have been talking a lot about the issue in Ivory Coast, and they're talking about people involved in this matter, but they seem to overlook the main responsible of this crisis, which to me is the former colonial power, France. The scenario which is happening in the Ivory Coast is not the first one in French-speaking country. It is not the first one. It happened to Congo. It happened to Chad. It happened in Gabon. It happened in Cameroon. It happened in Rwanda. It happened in Central Africa. France and also in Madagascar.
Exactly.
The same situation, in the same pattern. In the same pattern. They want somebody at the head of the country. They will back him no matter what. Okay? And they will do whatever we want to make it happen. This is the point. Now, coming back to, I just make a parallel, quoting some of the debaters on the internet. I will make a parallel in between what happened in Ivory Coast and what happened in Rwanda in 1994. In 1994, French were there, they armed Abiyarimana's people, and they committed the genocide. The Hutu, they were there. There was French army there. And when things became, disastrous, UN left and had passed a resolution allowing French people to disarm, to make the disarmament. But French army was already there, and they happened to turn them into UN peace forces, and they went after those who were able to denounce them to the public opinion, because it won't look. It's the same thing that's happening in Ivory Coast.
Let's consider time.
Yeah.
Let's
Exactly.
consider time, and also to say very clearly, this is part of what I ask of our African brothers and sisters here. You condemn America, France, but you don't protest them. Right? No, listen.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Exactly. How many of us have gathered together and gone to the French embassy in thousands and say we denounce your intervention in Africa and we are tired of your coming around? The truth is that nobody. You call a protest, nobody shows up. You know. Wait. I'm just offering that as part of the suggestion for a solution.
Can I just say something? Can I say something?
And one other thing I wanted to say is the issue of who their lackeys are on the continent. And the way we are discussing now is giving me an idea of the future, if we are actually honest, is that Africa needs a change of leadership, a kind of a revolution, so that all the IMF boys, French boys, and the court boys and, the religious boys and, the ethnic champions, all of them should be thrown out of power. Because what happens, as you are seeing in Ivory Coast, is that the moment there's crisis on an African continent, they have all these monitors in different African countries who go and do their job. Like you have in Nigeria, like he was saying, the president of Nigeria was buying election last week. We're reporting it live. $7,000 per delegate. The Americans don't say anything about it. But that election will eventually lead to an Ivory Coast-like situation in Nigeria in April, if we are not careful. When the Zimbabwe election held in 2007, it was better than the Nigerian election in 2007. But the Nigerian election was not questioned because Nigeria had oil. Nobody said anything wrong about it. All the observers just said it's bad election, and they left. So let me. You want to? Let him say what. So please, let's take you briefly, please, briefly.
Okay.
Very brief.
I'm Monique. I'm from the Congo Brazzaville, next to the Congo Kinshasa. We've been dealing with war since the time memorial. And I will go what the gentleman say about French. Francophones. We're talking about Francophones here. Ivory Coast, I've been in Ivory Coast for 4 years. I know Ivory Coast. What we're dealing with here is not Ivory Coast problem. It's African problem. Yeah. It is.
Ivory Coast is a part of the problem. The whole problem is Africa. What are we going to do about it? I've never seen in a word, in your own word, something called International Community Republic. I've never seen it. This is my first time of seeing international community coming together to throw one man, one. And in Africa, you know what? Every election in Africa has been fixed by so-called international community. Whenever international community supports somebody, there's a fraud somewhere. And I've seen it. In my country, the Congo, with ELF, in Nigeria, in Gabon, lately, have you seen Infrarouge, France Afrique? Yeah, have you seen Infrarouge, France Afrique? What do you call it? Yeah, no, the election, no, wait, no, I know, no, yeah, I know that, no, what I'm trying to say is this, yeah, no, yes, what I'm trying to say is this, when you talk, let me finish, let me say one thing only. I'm going to say one thing only. One thing. Yeah, one thing. The thing is, when you're talking about a solution, the solution is not that easy. If we don't deal with CFA, which is the money, Francophone money, we will never be free of whatever you're talking about, because money is the root of everything. We have to get out of that system, period. Yes, period.
Yeah, but
this guy been there for a long time.
Please. Yes, I have.
We'll take you next. The name is OG. I have to echo the gentleman's position here. It's very clear. When they have elections here in the US here, both Republicans and the Democrats, they're basically protecting American interests. That one is non-negotiable. What we have here in Ivory Coast, to me, my understanding is we have major ideological divide here. There are those who are committed to neocolonialism through Ouattara. Ouattara is 100% supported by France. My position as a Pan-Africanist is Ouattara must go.
I'm very sorry. I'm not an English speaker. I'm a French speaker. So I will speak in French, and somebody will translate. I'm from Cameroon. My name is Paul.
That's part of the problem. We don't speak our language.
Moi, j'ai des questions. Ma première question, c'est c'est que qu'est-ce que pour vous les Ivoiriens et vous, qu'est-ce qu'il y a de bien en Gbagbo?
What is good in Gbagbo? What's bad in Gbagbo? In terms of politics.
Et qu'est-ce qu'il y a de bien en Ouattara?
What is good in Ouattara?
Qu'est-ce qu'il n'a pas fait de bien?
What did he do wrong?
Ma deuxième question, c'est que
second question being,
qu'est-ce que vous pensez que les forces nouvelles seront?
What do you think of the rebels? Are they going to integrate the army? Are we not going to the same cycle as in Congo, where we always have an opposition? My question, third one, the solution today. What is the solution? Is it no Ouattara, no Gbagbo? Or Ouattara out, Gbagbo in? If Mr. Ouattara was in power, if everything was cool, would Mr. Ouattara win really? When I'm talking about Ivorians, I don't deal with whether they are born or foreign Ivorians. If today everything was cool, no army, no rebellions, who would win the elections? Who has a very good vision for Ivory Coast? Thank you.
Yes, so we'll now take our speakers to wrap up. the evening by another 5 minutes each.
So this is the conclusion?
This is going to be the conclusion because people have to go back to their various African countries in the city.
Okay, I will try to use my 5 minutes very quickly. One, point of correction. In Rwanda, it was not so much France, but it was actually, in this case, the United States that did the worst damage. The United States trained the Rwanda Patriotic Front because the U.S. under Clinton wanted to displace the French influence from there, and they used Uganda as their agent. And you can see what they're doing in Eastern Congo now. And the brother from Congo will elaborate on this.
So it's all
if
the
you
United
speak
States.
on him. Well, it's a fact, ma'am. The United States is an imperial power, whether you like it or not.
Instead of
Let me finish.
damning
You had your time, okay?
No,
Let me finish. In terms of a solution, it's become clear now that most African countries are not supportive of a military intervention because they know the consequences. They know it will not be contained. It would spill all over the West African region, and what we've seen, the atrocities in Sierra Leone, Liberia, so that is not the favorite solution right now. And I think that's the right approach. The problem is, when you talk about two elephants banging heads, the only way you can have a solution is for either one or both to be willing to make some sacrifices. And what I'm reading right now and sensing, that is not going to happen in the short run. The president of Angola has come up now with the proposal that rather than even an examination, maybe they should just have a new vote. And this time make sure that the system is in place, make sure there are effective monitors, make sure the right things that did not happen before does happen this time before they have new elections. That's the latest news that I just read coming out of President of Angola. But to deal with this, and one thing, I want to make a response to Oji, the brother in the back. It's quite clear that indeed the Western countries favor Ouattara. He had worked in the IMF. They think he's safe. He will pursue the neoclassical orthodox economy model. But I think that's not fair to say that everybody in the Ivory Coast who voted for him was also voting on behalf of France. So I don't think that's fair, even though I concede the point you made. But this is the challenge right now. The challenge that will need to be dealt with is the fact that Ouattara is endorsed by the major instruments in the West. And not by, okay, that's a fair comment. To the extent that at what point will somebody from the outside, these outside so-called mediators, say that maybe we need to reevaluate our position? Will that happen? Given the reckless manner in which most Western countries conduct their policy toward Africa, I'm not confident that that's going to happen. That's why I am still fearful that perhaps we have not seen the worst in the Ivory Coast.
Okay, so before I answer the question, if you don't mind, it's like 8:14. Maybe we can if Lisa allow that, we allow other people to say something so that we can finish at 8:30. Okay. Now
that's dependent on how much time you spend.
Yes. Okay. I will. Soroye. Maybe it is because as a moderator you were not supposed to talk the way you did. Okay. Okay.
I'm a modulator.
Okay. Okay. The brother from the Ivory Coast. You said something about France and what happened in Congo. I watched Lumumba's movie like 2 days ago. So if you did, it is fine. If you did not, I encourage you to go and watch that movie. You will see the role of the United Nations in 1961. You will see how Belgium and France and America, the role they played in 1961, 1 year after the independence of many African countries, and then 50 years after the assassination of Lumumba. We are, I'm a little bit, I do not want to be like that, but we might experience in Ivory Coast what happened to Lumumba. That's my fear, and I can say it. People don't want everything that is going on right now. They're plotting, to get the guy out of the way. If the guy doesn't resign, if he doesn't do what they say, the ultimate action they will do is to try to do a kind of military intervention. It might not be ECOMOG, but something will certainly happen, and then Gbagbo might have the fate of Lumumba. And so, having said that, if we as Africans, we see that the same thing is happening in Africa over and over, years after years, the question is not to denounce what the international community or what America or France and the European Union are doing in Africa. The question is, what are we doing? That's the question. And what do we do?
Yes. Yeah.
I am tired of seeing Africans complaining every day.
Yes.
And then, no, listen. CFA, that's another level. That's a level. I'm tired of seeing Africans. That's why I'm glad to see many Africans here. And, in this room, it is good, we talk. And then once again, who took the initiative to do this? Once again, who took this initiative?
I did.
It's not you. Okay, it's not you. Okay, so when I was in 1998. I had an opportunity to go to Italy. I was there. Listen, people. I was there in 1998, and there was a conference of Jubilee 2000 Coalition. You see all those the activists were mobilizing here in Seattle in 2001. I think it started in Europe. When I went to that conference, there were 38 people, 38 countries represented. I was the representative of Ivory Coast. I went there, was not sent by the country. But guess what? I was so shocked to see that those people who were there, who came from Europe, from America, most of them to talk about the cancellation of poor countries' debt or to talk about the cancellation of African countries' debt, most of them were young, white people, if I can say that.
Yeah.
So we should stop denouncing, European powers, because they have been doing what they have been doing for centuries. We had slavery, we had apartheid, we had colonization, and colonialism into the globalization, and they're inventing new systems in order to oppress the people of Africa or people of the global African diaspora. Now, another time, I will share with you the vision I have for Africa, and I call it the Vision for the Redemption of Africa, and it is a new dispensation of Pan-Africanism. And God gave me the grace to do my dissertation in the field of Pan-Africanism, because I believe that the only way we can stand against all those forces, it is in unity. It is to promote an African collective consciousness, and that's Gbagbo's mistake, like I said, to answer your question, that if you know that you're an African leader, you talk about sovereignty, you talk about dignity of Africa, you talk about independence, you have declared war to the foreign powers. So you cannot just say words like that, and then you're going to be... No, listen, let me finish.
Yes, my question was about the Ivory Coast, not about what Gbagbo did for the foreign country.
No, I'm coming.
For the Ivory Coast people, what Gbagbo was good or bad. I mean,
you asked question. I mentioned your question.
Yes, but not about the foreign.
Let him finish.
Let's
have order.
So that's one of the things when you talk. One of the mistakes of Gbagbo. Now, if you want to talk about what Gbagbo did, briefly, I said he struggled. I said that already for freedom. I said that. And he came to power
as a president.
Just let me finish. Yes. Okay. He came to power through pacific means.
Yes.
And then as a president, this is one of the things I said. That's one of the things I cannot be particularly proud of as a president, because he could have delivered more. He increased the salaries of people at the custom union, of the police officers, and with different other things. And he even resumed the relationship with the international institutions that left the country after the 1990 coup d'etat. And then the first budget Gbagbo put into place, it was called budget sécurisé, like if you can call it secured budget. And then with that budget, the guy could pay the salary with no financial money coming from outside. 2 years later, the coup happened, and then he was distracted, and people in the country who support him were not satisfied because they think that there are things he could have done and he hasn't done as a president. So he cannot put everything on the rebellion or the civil war. Now, for Alassane Dramane Ouattara, he was prime minister, and I said it already, he could not deliver, like contrary to what people are saying. And then he used means of violence, to try and be
so
president.
For you, Ouattara never did something good for Ivory Coast.
I never said that.
No, please, you never said that. Can we, excuse me, please.
He do something.
I said already,
What was in charge now? No, I'm going to step down my feet. I'm going to step down my feet.
Yes.
Please, both of you.
I just want to say one thing, please. I said already, when people are speaking, that's one problem people have. When we talking like that, and I came here, even though I'm from Ivory Coast and I wrote about the thing, I have to do research. You see, so because I can expect people to know more than me, is what I'm saying. So, and first of all, the only thing I do, I try to give facts to people. And then even though people can say that I said things I haven't said, Alassane Dramane Ouattara said it when he was prime minister. These are the words I use. It gave a sense of organization to Ivory Coast. Did I say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, he was here. He was here. Okay, I said that. So I never said that Alassane Ouattara did not do anything good in Ivory Coast. Okay, please.
So I just want I'll take for because he wanted us to do up to 2, and he only left 8 minutes for the rest of it. Wait, please. I want to appeal to you that when the moderator says please let there be peace, please let there be peace. I wanted to say one of the examples we had globally recently was Lula in Brazil. He spent 8 years in power. He did so much, and he walked away. Somebody asked him, what are you going to be doing with your time? He said, I'm going to be riding a bicycle around the city. Why is it that he didn't think? Because if Lula wanted to extend his tenure, I'm sure Brazilians would gladly give him another 4 years. Because he did so well in the country. Why don't we have Lulas of Africa?
That's great.
And that is what I was asking of Gbagbo. This is my first point of departure. No, please. There was rebellion. Please, there was rebellion in Brazil. There is rebellion. There is gang rebellion in Brazil that is worse than what you have in Ivory Coast. There was gang rebellion in Brazil that almost brought down the government. Go and check. Go and check.
Sorry.
We have 6 minutes left.
Please, we have 6 minutes left. Please. What I'm saying is that any African leader who wants to extend their tenure have an excuse. Some of them will say they want to have another wife. It's not. It doesn't make sense. So please, let me take you at the back there.
I think I want to come back to my sister's question.
Yes.
This crisis is about election. I think every election, we are in America, every election, when it happens and there is a problem, the very first thing people do is to recount. I didn't hear you guys talking about. No, we gotta stop that. We are not playing over here. It's about that. I'm sorry. Okay. But seriously, I want you to comment a little bit about that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. But this is really important. It happened in Connecticut, it happened with the Franca in Minnesota, everywhere in Florida, 2000. We don't talk about. Gbagbo is today asking to everybody to calm down so we can recount. That's all we want.
So,
I'm sorry if I didn't get this.
Excuse me. Please, let's take another person here.
No, the lady over there.
We will take the lady. Let's take you, please.
Excuse me, everybody. My name is Mamadou Dawe.
Yes.
And on that, I'm an African dancer.
Oh, great.
Culture teacher. Culture ambassador from the Ivory Coast. Wow. Shall Kofi give me that title? The ambassador. Okay. Please, whatever is going on, where we have to point finger on foreigners, it is ourselves. You have to love yourself. You have to respect yourself. We are so greedy. When one sits, you don't want to stand up. It's no justice. That's why we are in this situation. I'm victim of that myself. Because the name Mamadou I have is from North. I got judged by that. I didn't get no penny from the title I got. And I'm the only one Ivorian come in this country promote the Ivory Coast. She's my witness. How many Ivorians I bring in this country to develop the culture? How many Ivorians almost will die? I have to support Vado. You know everything here in this country. The government never pay attention to nothing. Why? Because we don't love our own culture. How we used to solve our problem in Africa before? Is two hands wash each other. We need foreigners, they need us. We cannot say foreigners. What language we speaking now? Who's talking to me in Guru or Bete? Is that language? Can we live without foreigners? Can we live without... Alassane is Ivorian. Burkina and the Cote d'Ivoire, it was one country before. Why not to look the history of the country? His own sister are Ivorian. He's not Ivorian. That's no justice. No. Let's go finish. Please, we have to go back again, look the picture.
Cultural Ambassador, thank you for your contribution.
Hey, for Lule. I'm Guru. I'm Jula.
Yes.
What you gonna say about Rebo? I didn't pay for victim. What you gonna say about the military? I have a brother's killed. Last week I buried one.
Yes.
Because the
Please,
military
Thank you.
I said,
Let another person speak.
Killed my cousin.
Excuse me.
Can you go take him in his house?
Sir. Thank you. Just press the back of your ear and say who's that? Thank you. Speak.
My name is Linda Gay. I'm French. Okay. Okay, let me finish. I'm part of that generation of children born in Europe or in the US from African parents. My dad is from Cote d'Ivoire. So when I say I'm Ivorian, of course I'm not, because I've never lived in Ivory Coast. I do follow what's going on in Ivory Coast, and I've been personally involved in what's going on. I just have one question, and
that's very, very important. And because when I was reading about the election in Brazil, I think I read this wonderful sentence written by a journalist who said that in Brazil, good politics is about spreading the wealth, right? And then, and I said it already, this is one of the things I think Gbagbo Laurent hasn't delivered the way people like me who supported him when we were younger, he hasn't delivered the way we thought he should. He said that, yes, there was a war, yes, there was a rebellion, but there are ways in order to try and solve and meet the needs of the people. So on that level, I agree those who criticize him on that point. That's one thing. Second, my brother, the ambassador. Yes. One problem people should know is about Alassane Ouattara is this. I'm very comfortable when I talk about Alassane Ouattara's citizenship of nationality. I don't have a problem to talk about that because I give facts. You see, I'm not here saying that Alassane Ouattara is not Ivorian. And I said that if one of your parents is an Ivorian, you're an Ivorian. But the problem with Alassane Ouattara's citizenship and that the international media don't talk about is this. There are many in Ivory Coast who think that he hasn't demonstrated enough attachment to the land to be the president of the country. Because for decades, he was known and he had the citizenship of Upper Volta. Now, when we talk about unification of Africa, yes, we believe in that. Then we can talk and see who is going to be like in that united front of Africa and who comes from Upper Volta, who comes from the Ivory Coast. You see, so I just don't get me wrong about what I said on Alassane Ouattara's. But for the international court, I think they're biased in Ivory Coast. Because everybody knows that those rebels killed, that Soro is the leader of the rebellion, that Alassane Ouattara funded the rebellion, everybody knows that. So, like I said, Gbagbo forces have killed in Ivory Coast to protect Gbagbo's regime, and Alassane Ouattara's forces have killed in Ivory Coast. So if the International Court want to investigate and talk about crimes against humanity, they need to, to take all those crimes into account, not go and try and target Laurent Gbagbo. That's my say, but that's my answer to your question.
Okay, I'll start with the sister who asked the question about the ICC. The ICC is an instrument that is used selectively by Washington, by Paris, and by London. And I'll give you the best example. The prosecution of the indictment of al-Bashir in the Sudan for the atrocities in Darfur. That's fine. What about the atrocities committed in Eastern Congo by Ugandan soldiers and soldiers from Rwanda? An estimated 5 million people are dead, and the violence that they unleash still continues unabated. Up to date, in 2005, the International Court of Justice found Uganda liable for these atrocities in the Congo and called for compensation of $10 billion. Not a dime has been paid. Now, using that same investigation and the results of that, the International Criminal Court started its own investigation, according to an article in the Wall Street Journal, July 8, 2006. And the article reported that the Ugandan president called Kofi Annan, then the UN Secretary General, and asked him to block the investigation. Why is not anywhere else? The ICC is one of the most corrupt instruments in the world. And the Congolese citizens, the people of the Congo, should file lawsuit. Whether it goes anywhere or not, it's fine. You'll still get the publicity. File a lawsuit against the ICC. Because if the victims of atrocities in Darfur deserve justice, 5 million Congolese also need to be heard. Now, in terms of leadership, we are sorely lacking that in Africa. It's quite obvious. You mentioned Lula, and I'm glad you brought that up. Julius Nyerere is the only one I can recall who led Tanzania, who could have continued to be president until the day he went to his grave. Do we have comparable leadership today? No. The closest we had was Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela could have said, because of the atrocities of apartheid, white people should not even consider being in parliament in South Africa. Many South Africans might have supported that. But he knew the consequences of retribution. He said, no, let's work on reconciliation. And many people didn't understand that. And many people still criticize him up to date, that these criminals who perpetrated the apartheid regime were never punished. But some could also take the position that if we had opened it up to retribution and counter-retribution, South Africa would not be what it is today. And perhaps we need at least one symbol of stability on the African continent. So for that purpose, perhaps we can look up to South Africa in that respect. Somebody talked about recount. We did talk about that. We said, I did mention that. You just don't remember. I said
you're too close to the food.
I said when Gbagbo suggested that as something he's willing to be conducted, that's the point that I also started reevaluating all the other reporting and some of the writing that I myself had written up to that point. I made that concession. But to be honest with you, none of these two seem ready to make the sacrifice that is needed to move forward. To move forward in Ivory Coast. Perhaps they should have new elections, but perhaps both of them might consider having other people run. They're not the only people that can lead the Ivory Coast. But that's asking maybe too much in an African country. And those are my remarks.
So, were you going to say something? Really quickly?
Something really
very quickly.
It's really off the discussion right now.
Yeah.
It's my first time coming here. And I was asking, how do you pick up points, like topics to talk about?
All right.
Because I have interest in what's happening in southern Sudan, the referendum.
Yes.
I have interest in that. I have who's gaining in the petition.
I'll say, look.
How do we
look behind you? and bribe the woman over there who's standing, and she will pick your topic. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
At least put something in the
Yes.
basket if you
Yes.
want
Put something in
to
the
consider.
Let me, let you guys. Okay, so let me just. Lisa, did you have something to say?
For him to speak, and we have our gentleman here, Bakari Tanya from Mauritania.
Recognition.
And I believe he still has a petition.
A simplistic request or desire. It is the truth about most of we Africans who are living out here and our African brothers and sisters. As my brother here said, let's be on the lookout for those countries that are having elections. You know, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Uganda has been rigging election forever, by the way. Zimbabwe, and several other countries, and also South Sudan. Let's keep watch on these areas. And when you hear back from us again, please show up so that we can continue this robust discussion about the future of Africa. One of the things that we've been working on is to have an African center here that can be discussing all of these issues all over Africa from time to time. This is not about government. As you can see, except somebody is hiding as a government agent here, there's no government here. And we have had a discussion. We have not killed ourselves. We have discussed robustly and respectfully about issues that are very, very thorny. As a matter of fact, I have the feeling that if Gbagbo and Ouattara were here tonight, would have resolved their problem, you know, for them.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Well, that's on a simplistic note. But we want to thank you very much. And if you have not made your contributions, please go back to the basket, you know, the peaceful basket. This is the basket of peace and support. Thank you. And please feel free to mingle and have some good food for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Information.